Captain Hyun Woo stood on the bridge of the eternal dawn and watched the stars through the wide window. 300 years had passed since any human ship had traveled this far from home. The silence of deep space felt heavy around them, like they were walking through an old graveyard where they did not belong. "Captain," said So-young from her station near the engine controls. Her voice was quiet, but it carried across the bridge easily. "We are now 50 light-years from Earth. We have crossed the boundary." Hyunwoo nodded slowly. The boundary. Every human knew about it, even if they had never seen it. It was an invisible line drawn around human space 3 centuries ago. Beyond that line, the rest of the galaxy lived their lives. Inside that line, humans had agreed to stay asleep. Tae-jin looked up from his navigation desk, his young face full of excitement. "Sir, I am reading something strange ahead. There are objects floating in space. They look like beacons." The captain walked over to look at Tae-jin's screen. Sure enough, there were dozens of metal objects drifting in the darkness between the stars. They were old, very old, but they still glowed with soft blue light. "Bring us closer," Hyunwoo ordered. "But slowly. We do not know what those things are." As the eternal dawn moved forward, the beacons became clearer on their screens. They were beautiful in a strange way, made of metals that seemed to shift color in the starlight. Each one was about the size of a small building covered in symbols and writing. "Captain," So-young said, her voice now filled with wonder, "I am getting readings from the beacons. They are transmitting something. Messages, I think. Can you understand them?" So-young worked at her controls for several minutes. "The computer is trying to translate. There are many languages here. Hundreds of them, maybe more." She paused, staring at her screen. "Sir, some of these languages are very old, older than our records go back." Tae-jin stood up from his chair. "What do they say?" So-young read from her screen, her voice getting quieter with each word. "Warning to all who travel the void. The sleepers must not wake. Turn back now. This space is forbidden. The sleepers must not wake." The bridge became very quiet. Hyunwoo felt a cold feeling in his stomach. "Are there more messages?" "Yes, sir. Many more. All saying the same thing in different languages." So-young looked up at him. "Captain, who are the sleepers?" But Hyunwoo already knew. They all knew, even if no one wanted to say it out loud. The sleepers were them. The sleepers were humans. "Keep translating," he ordered. "I want to know everything these beacons are telling us." For the next hour, So-young worked to decode more messages. What they found made less and less sense. The beacons spoke of a great war that had torn apart 2 arms of the galaxy. They told stories of worlds turned to ash and stars that went dark. They warned of weapons that could kill planets and ships that moved faster than light itself, and in every message, in every language, the same warning: "Do not wake the humans." "This cannot be right," Tae-jin said, shaking his head. "Humans have been peaceful for 300 years. We stopped fighting. We agreed to stay in our own space." Hyunwoo looked at the young man. Tae-jin had been born long after the last war. He had grown up in a time when humans built gardens and wrote poetry. He had never seen what humans could do when they were angry. "So-young," the captain said, "do you remember the stories your grandmother told you about the old wars?" So-young nodded slowly. "She said humans fought the Velthari Empire. She said it was terrible." "More than terrible," Hyunwoo said quietly. "The war lasted 50 years. When it ended, the Velthari Empire was gone. Not defeated, gone. Every world, every ship, every trace of them wiped from existence." Tae-jin looked confused. "But we won the war. That is good, right?" "We did not just win," So-young said, understanding beginning to show in her eyes. "We destroyed them so completely that the rest of the galaxy became afraid of us." Hyunwoo nodded. The peace treaty was not about humans losing. It was about humans agreeing to stop. The galaxy asked us to go to sleep because they were terrified of what we might do next. They continued to study the beacons. The more they learned, the stranger it became. The messages were not just warnings. They were instructions, trade routes that went around human space, laws that forbade any ship from entering the boundary zone, treaties between alien species that all included the same rule. Never disturb the humans, Captain, So Young said after reading another set of messages. According to this, there are entire civilizations that have been built around the idea of keeping us asleep. They plan their wars to make sure the fighting never reaches our space. They have created buffer zones and neutral territories, all to keep us from waking up. How many species know about this? Tae-jin asked. All of them, So Young replied. Every intelligent race in the galaxy. It is their most important law. Hyun-woo felt a heavy weight settling on his shoulders. He had thought they were just explorers, curious humans taking their first steps back into the wider universe. But now he understood they were something much more dangerous. They were the thing that the entire galaxy had nightmares about. Sir, Tae-jin said in a small voice. What do we do now? Before Hyun-woo could answer, alarms began to sound throughout the ship. So Young quickly checked her instruments. Captain, I am detecting ships approaching. Many ships. They are not human. On the main screen, dots of light appeared in the distance. As they got closer, the shapes became clear. Alien vessels, unlike anything humans had built. They were smooth and curved, almost organic-looking, and there were hundreds of them. Are they hostile? Hyun-woo asked. I do not think so, So Young said, studying her readings. They are keeping their distance. They seem to be watching us. A communication came through their speakers. The voice was strange, with sounds that human throats could not make. But the computer translated it quickly. Human vessel, you have crossed the boundary. Please return to your territory immediately. We do not wish to wake the sleepers. Please go back to your space. Hyun-woo stepped forward to the communication station. This is Captain Hyun-woo of the human ship Eternal Dawn. We are explorers. We mean no harm to anyone. There was a long pause. Then the alien voice came back, and it sounded frightened. You are awake. The sleepers are awake. Please, we beg you, go back to sleep. We will not disturb you. We will not enter your space. Please do not wake the others. What others? Hyun-woo asked, but the alien ships were already moving away, fleeing as fast as they could. Soon, the Eternal Dawn was alone again, with just the ancient beacons for company. The three humans stood on their bridge and looked at each other. They had come out here looking for adventure and new discoveries. Instead, they had found something much more troubling. They had found a galaxy that lived in fear of them. Captain, So Young said softly. What kind of people are we? Hyun-woo did not have an answer. But he knew one thing for certain. They needed to learn more about what humans had done 300 years ago. They needed to understand why an entire galaxy had organized itself around the simple rule of never waking them up, and deep in his heart, he was beginning to worry about what would happen if they failed to stay asleep. Dalesh stood at the command center of his flagship and watched the dying star that had once warmed his homeworld. The red giant was growing larger each day, reaching out with burning fingers to swallow everything his people had ever built. Soon, very soon, there would be nothing left of the Mordaki civilization except the fleet of ships that fled through space. Commander, said his aide, a young Mordaki named Vectar, our scouts have found something, a region of space with many worlds, suitable for our needs. Rich planets, good suns, clean water. Dalesh turned his attention to the star map that appeared in the air before him. The region Vectar showed him looked perfect. Dozens of worlds that could support Mordaki life. Solar systems with the right kind of energy. Everything they needed to rebuild their civilization. Are these worlds occupied? Dalesh asked. Some show signs of primitive settlements, but nothing advanced. The inhabitants call themselves humans. Our analysis suggests they are a young species, barely capable of basic space travel. Dalesh studied the map more carefully. The human territory was surprisingly large for such a primitive people. It stretched across many star systems, all centered around a yellow star they called Sol. What about defenses? He asked. Vectar checked his data. Minimal. A few space stations at the edges of their territory. Some patrol ships that appear to be mostly for exploration. Nothing that would threaten our fleet. And the other galactic powers. What do they say about this region? This was where Vectar hesitated. Commander, there are warnings, many warnings. The space around human territory is marked as forbidden in most star charts. Trade routes go around it. There are ancient beacons that tell ships to stay away. Dalash made a sound of dismissal. Superstition and old fears. The galaxy is full of stories meant to keep valuable territory unexplored. If these humans were truly dangerous, why have they not expanded beyond their small region of space? The warnings are very specific, Commander. They speak of great wars and terrible weapons. They say the humans should not be awakened. Awakened? Dalesh laughed, a harsh sound that echoed through the command center. You make them sound like sleeping gods. They are primitives, Vector. Look at their technology. Look at their simple ships. They are no threat to us. But even as he spoke, Dalesh felt a small doubt in his mind. The warnings were unusually consistent across many different species. Even races that hated each other agreed on one thing: stay away from human space. Still, his people were dying. Every day they spent in space was another day closer to the end of their food supplies, another day closer to watching his civilization fade into nothing. He could not let fear of primitive humans stop him from saving his people. Send word to the fleet, Dalesh ordered. We are moving into human territory. Begin with the outer worlds. Establish colonies where the human presence is weakest. Vector bowed his head. Yes, Commander. But what if the warnings are true? Then we will deal with whatever these humans can throw at us. We are Mordaki. We have conquered 12 star systems. We have weapons that can crack planets. What could a few primitive humans do to stop us? Ji-hoon was drinking his morning coffee when the alarm started screaming at Kepler Station. As station commander, he had heard many alarms over the years. But this one was different. This one was the alarm that meant unknown ships were crossing into human space. He ran to the command center, still holding his coffee cup. The main display showed dozens of red dots moving across the boundary zone. Alien ships, larger than anything humans had built in recent years. Report, Ji-hoon demanded. Lieutenant Yoonji looked up from her station. She was the station's xenobiologist, one of the few humans who still studied alien life. Commander, we have approximately 200 unknown vessels entering Sector 7. They appear to be of Mordaki design. Mordaki? Ji-hoon had never heard the name before. A species from the Outer Rim. Our records show they were involved in some minor conflicts about a century ago, but nothing major. They are refugees, sir. Their star is dying. Ji-hoon set down his coffee and walked to the main display. The alien ships were not moving in an attack formation. They seemed to be exploring, sending out smaller scouts to examine the planets in the outer systems. Have you tried to contact them? Yes, sir. They responded once, very briefly. They said they were claiming the empty worlds for colonization. When I told them this was human territory, they laughed. They laughed? Yoonji nodded. The Mordaki commander said humans were too primitive to stop them. He said they had studied our technology and found it inferior to theirs. Ji-hoon felt anger beginning to build in his chest. It had been 300 years since any alien species had dared to enter human space uninvited. 300 years since anyone had called humans primitive. Sir, said Kyung-ho from the tactical station. Kyung-ho was old enough to remember the stories from his grandfather, stories about the last time aliens had underestimated humans. Should I send a warning to Earth Command? Not yet, Ji-hoon said. First, let us try to solve this peacefully. Open a channel to the Mordaki flagship. The main screen flickered and the face of an alien appeared. Dalesh looked like a cross between a lizard and a bird, with golden scales and bright red eyes. When he spoke, his voice was full of confidence and contempt. Human Commander, Dalesh said. I am Dalesh of the Mordaki fleet. We are claiming the outer worlds of this system for our people. You may continue to live on your core worlds, but we require these planets for colonization. Ji-hoon kept his voice calm and steady. Commander Dalesh, you are in violation of human territorial space. I am ordering you to withdraw your fleet immediately. Dalesh made that harsh laughing sound again. With what authority, human? Your few patrol ships? Your small space stations? We have studied your capabilities. You cannot stop us. Commander, Ji-hoon said, and now his voice carried a warning that came from deep in human history. You do not understand what you are doing. Please reconsider. Leave our space now and there will be no conflict between our peoples. Are you threatening me, primitive? Dalesh's red eyes glowed brighter. We have weapons that can destroy worlds. We have ships that number in the hundreds. What could your pathetic species possibly do to threaten the Mordaki? Jihoon was quiet for a long moment. In that silence, he thought about the old stories. He thought about his grandfather's tales of the HFY War. He thought about weapons that had been locked away for 3 centuries, waiting for the day when someone would be foolish enough to wake the sleeping giant. Commander Dalesh, he said finally, I will ask you one more time. Please leave human space. Please do not make us wake up. Wake up? Dalesh laughed louder than before. You speak as if humans are some great power. You are nothing. You have been hiding in your small corner of space for centuries like frightened children. We will take what we need, and you will watch. The communication ended. Dalesh's face disappeared from the screen, leaving Jihoon staring at the red dots that represented the alien fleet. They were moving deeper into human territory, establishing colonies on 3 different worlds. Commander, Yunji said quietly. What do we do now? Jihoon turned to Kyung-ho. Send a priority message to Earth Command. Use the old protocols. Tell them we have a violation of the boundary agreement. Tell them... He paused, knowing that his next words would change everything. Tell them the sleepers are being awakened. Kyung-ho's hands hesitated over his controls. Sir, are you sure? Once we send that message, there is no taking it back. The Mordaki have made their choice, Jihoon said. They have been warned. They have been given the chance to leave peacefully. Now they will learn why the galaxy has one rule. As Kyung-ho sent the message, Jihoon looked out at the stars and wondered if Dalesh would still be laughing when he learned what humans really were. The alien commander thought he was facing primitives and weaklings. He was about to discover that humans had never stopped being the thing that gave the galaxy nightmares. They had just learned to sleep with one eye open. The message from Kepler Station reached Earth Command in less than 6 hours. By the time the sun set that day, every human world in the galaxy had received the same simple transmission. Boundary violation confirmed. Hostile intent established. Protocols 7 through 12 are now active. On New Busan, a farming world where humans had grown rice and raised children for 3 centuries, Governor Wu Jin received the message while he was having dinner with his family. He read it twice, then excused himself from the table and walked to his home office. In the basement of his house, behind a wall that his own children had never seen opened, was a room that had waited 300 years for this moment. Wu Jin placed his hand on a scanner that had been collecting dust since his grandfather's time. The wall slid away with a soft hiss. Inside the hidden room were weapons that could level mountains, communication devices that could reach across the galaxy in minutes, and most importantly, a data crystal that contained plans his people had hoped they would never need to use. Wu Jin picked up the crystal and looked at it for a long moment. Then he placed it into the reader and began to understand why the galaxy feared humans. On the military base on Luna, Admiral Mi Kyung had been enjoying her retirement. She spent her days reading books and tending to her garden. She had not worn her uniform in 15 years. When the message came, she was teaching her granddaughter how to plant tomatoes. "Grandmother," the little girl asked, "why do you look so sad?" Mi Kyung knelt down and hugged her granddaughter close. "I am not sad, little one. But grandmother has to go away for a while. I have work to do." "What kind of work?" Mi Kyung looked up at the earth hanging in the sky above them. "The kind of work I hoped you would never have to see." 20 minutes later, Mi Kyung stood in a bunker deep beneath the lunar surface. Around her, machines that had slept for 3 centuries were coming back to life. Lights blinked on, screens flickered to existence. And in the center of the room, a holographic display showed the locations of every human military asset in the galaxy. "Admiral," said her aide, a young man named Lieutenant Dong Hyun, "the reserve fleets are receiving activation orders." "But ma'am, most of our ships are so old. The Mordaki have better technology." Mi Kyung smiled, but it was not a happy smile. "Lieutenant, do you know what humans did during the 300 years of peace?" "We farmed. We built cities. We wrote poetry. We did all of those things," Mi Kyung agreed. "But we also remembered Every human world has hidden bunkers like this one. Every human family has stories passed down from the war years, and every human leader has access to plans that the galaxy hoped we had forgotten. She touched a control, and the holographic display changed. Now it showed something that made Dong-Hyun's face go pale. Ships, thousands of ships. Not the small patrol vessels that other species had seen, but massive warships hidden in asteroid belts and dead moons throughout human space. "Ma'am," Dong-Hyun whispered, "where did all these ships come from?" "We built them," Mi-kyung said simply. During the peace years, every human world contributed resources to Project Deep Sleep. We told ourselves we were just being cautious. We told ourselves we would never need them. But why so many? Mi-kyung looked at the young man. He had been born after the wars. He had grown up believing that humans were peaceful farmers and poets. "Lieutenant, what do you think happens when you take the most dangerous predator in the galaxy and give it 300 years to think about how to be more dangerous?" On a mining station in the asteroid belt, Jae-sung was working late when the emergency protocols activated. Lights he had never seen before began flashing throughout the facility. Doors that had been sealed since before his birth slid open with the sound of ancient machinery coming back to life. "What is happening?" asked his assistant, a young woman named Yoon Seo. "I think," Jae-sung said slowly, "we are about to find out what this place really is." They had always known the mining station was old. Built during the early colonial period, it had been extracting metals from asteroids for centuries. But as they explored the newly opened sections, they discovered that mining had been only part of its purpose. The hidden levels contained factories, not the kind that made tools or clothes, but the kind that made weapons. Weapons that followed. Designs Jae-sung had never seen before. Weapons that seemed to bend the laws of physics. "These cannot be real," Yoon Seo said, staring at technical drawings that hurt her head to look at. "These designs, they show weapons that could destroy solar systems." Jae-sung found a terminal that was still active and began reading the files. "According to this, every mining station in human space has been building these things for 300 years, automatically, without human oversight." "But why?" "Because," Jae-sung said, his voice full of awe and terror, "someone decided that if humans ever had to wake up, they would wake up ready for anything." The communications came flooding in from every corner of human space. On farming worlds, hidden weapon caches were opening. On research stations, scientists were discovering that their peaceful experiments had military applications they had never imagined. On colony ships that had been drifting between stars for decades, crews were learning that their vessels carried enough firepower to sterilize planets. Sung-min worked at the Central Communications Hub on Mars, coordinating the flood of reports. Each message that came in made the picture clearer and more terrifying. Humans had not spent 300 years being peaceful. They had spent 300 years preparing for war on a scale that the galaxy had never seen. "Sir," said his assistant, "I am getting reports from the Outer Rim. Human ships are beginning to move. Ships that nobody knew existed." "How many ships?" "Thousands. Maybe tens of thousands. They are coming out of asteroid belts, gas giant moons, and deep space hiding spots. Some of them are using technology that our sensors cannot even identify properly." Sung-min looked at his screens and tried to understand what he was seeing. The human fleet that was assembling was larger than the combined forces of most galactic civilizations, and these were not exploration ships or cargo haulers. These were warships built with 3 centuries of technological advancement and one purpose: to ensure that nothing in the galaxy could threaten humanity ever again. "Get me a channel to all human worlds," Sung-min ordered. "It is time to send a message to the Mordaki." The transmission went out on frequencies that had not been used since the last war. In a voice that carried the weight of human history, Sung-min spoke to the aliens who had broken the galaxy's most important rule. "Attention, Mordaki fleet. This is the Human Colonial Authority. You have violated our territorial space and ignored our warnings to withdraw. Under the Articles of the Galactic Peace Accords, you are hereby classified as hostile invaders." He paused, knowing that his next words would be recorded in history books across the galaxy. "You have awakened humanity. You have approximately 72 hours to leave our space before we demonstrate why the galaxy has spent 3 centuries trying to keep us asleep. We strongly recommend that you use this time wisely. The message ended, and space around the human colonies fell silent. But it was not the silence of peace. It was the silence that comes before thunder, when the air itself holds its breath in anticipation of the storm to come. In bunkers and hidden bases across human space, weapons that could crack planets were powering up. Ships that moved faster than light were leaving their hiding places, and humans who had spent their lives growing crops and writing poetry were remembering lessons their grandparents had taught them about what it meant to be human in a hostile universe. The galaxy had one rule: do not wake the humans. The Mordaki had broken that rule, and now they were about to learn why it existed. Dalesh laughed when he heard the human warning. 72 hours to leave their space? The primitive humans thought they could threaten the mighty Mordaki fleet with their small patrol ships and farming colonies. Vectar, he called to his aide. How many human ships have we detected in the area? Approximately 12, Commander. Small vessels, lightly armed. Nothing that could threaten even one of our destroyers. Dalesh made his harsh laughing sound again. 12 ships against our fleet of 200. The humans have gone mad with fear. Ignore their warning. Continue establishing colonies on the outer worlds. But even as he spoke, something was bothering him. The human message had been broadcast on frequencies that his sensors could barely detect. Old frequencies, powerful frequencies, the kind that could reach across entire star systems in seconds. How did primitive humans have access to such advanced communication technology? Commander, Vectar said, checking his instruments. I am detecting some unusual readings from the asteroid belt near the third planet. Energy signatures that do not match any known technology. Investigate, Dalesh ordered. Send a squadron to examine those asteroids. The squadron of 12 Mordaki ships moved toward the asteroid belt. Dalesh watched on his screens as they approached the floating rocks. Everything seemed normal. Just another asteroid belt around another star. Then the asteroids began to move. What Dalesh had thought were floating rocks started to unfold like metal flowers. Hidden docking bays opened, weapon ports emerged from carefully disguised surfaces, and from inside the asteroids came ships, not the small human patrol vessels Dalesh had expected. These were massive warships, each one larger than his flagship. Their hulls were black as space itself, covered in armor that seemed to drink in starlight. They moved with impossible grace for such large vessels, like predators emerging from hiding. How many ships? Dalesh demanded, his voice no longer confident. I count 47 capital ships, Commander, and they are still coming out of the asteroids. The human fleet arranged itself in a formation that Dalesh had never seen before. It was not like the orderly battle lines that most species used. Instead, the human ships positioned themselves in a pattern that seemed random, but felt somehow perfect, like a spider's web made of metal and death. Are they targeting us? Dalesh asked. No, sir. They are just waiting. A communication came from the human fleet. The voice belonged to a woman, calm and professional, but with something underneath that made Dalesh's scales crawl. Mordaki Fleet, this is Admiral Mi-kyung of the Human Defense Force. You have 68 hours and 37 minutes remaining to leave human space. We recommend you begin your withdrawal immediately. Dalesh opened a channel. Human Admiral, I am Dalesh, commander of the Mordaki Fleet. You are outnumbered 4-1. Withdraw your ships, and we will not destroy them. There was a pause. Then Mi-kyung spoke again, and now there was something in her voice that sounded almost like pity. Commander Dalesh, you misunderstand the situation. We are not here to fight you. We are here to give you one last chance to leave peacefully. You threaten me with 40 ships against my 200? Commander, Mi-kyung said gently, these are not all of our ships. As she spoke, space around the Mordaki fleet began to shimmer. More ships appeared, materializing out of what seemed like empty space. Ships that had been hidden by technology the Mordaki could not detect. Ships that had been waiting in dimensions that Dalesh did not know existed. Within minutes, the human fleet had grown to over 300 vessels, and they were still appearing. Impossible, Dalesh whispered. Where are they coming from? Commander, Vectar said, his voice shaking. I am detecting weapon signatures that do not match anything in our databases. These ships, They are using technology that should not exist. Dalesh studied the human fleet on his screens. Each ship was a work of art and a promise of destruction. They moved in perfect coordination, as if controlled by a single mind. Their weapons were unlike anything he had ever seen, arrays of devices that seemed to bend space around them. What kind of weapons are those? I do not know, sir. My instruments cannot properly scan them. It is as if the weapons exist in more dimensions than our sensors can detect. A new voice came over the communication channel. This one belonged to Captain Hyunwoo of the Eternal Dawn, the small human ship that had first discovered the ancient warning beacons. Commander Dalesh, Hyunwoo said, I want you to understand something. 300 years ago, humans fought a war that nearly destroyed 2 spiral arms of this galaxy. When that war ended, we agreed to go to sleep not because we had lost, but because we had won too completely. What does that mean? Dalesh demanded. It means we erased our enemies so thoroughly that the galaxy became afraid of us. Not afraid of our weapons or our ships, but afraid of what we might do next. So we agreed to isolate ourselves. We agreed to pretend to be peaceful farmers and poets. Hyunwoo paused, and when he continued, his voice carried the weight of 3 centuries of human restraint. But we never forgot how to be what we really are. We never stopped building better weapons, better ships, better ways to protect ourselves. We just learned to hide them very well. On his command ship, Dalesh was beginning to understand the magnitude of his mistake. The warnings about human space had not been superstition. They had been the galaxy's desperate attempt to keep a sleeping monster from waking up. You have 57 hours remaining, Admiral Mi-kyung announced. We suggest you use that time to gather your people and leave our space. Do not make us show you what 3 centuries of preparation has created. But Dalesh's pride would not let him retreat. The Mordaki were a warrior race. They had conquered 12 star systems. They would not be frightened away by human threats and optical illusions. All ships, he broadcast to his fleet. Attack formation. We will show these humans what Mordaki warriors can do. The Mordaki fleet moved toward the human ships, weapons charging, ready for battle. They were confident in their superior numbers and their advanced technology. What happened next would be talked about in whispers across the galaxy for the next 1,000 years. The human ships did not fire conventional weapons. Instead, they did something that violated every law of physics the Mordaki understood. Space itself began to change around the alien fleet. Gravity became unstable. Time moved differently in some areas than others. Reality became flexible. Mordaki ships found themselves frozen in place while space folded around them. Others discovered that their weapons were firing backwards through time, hitting their own ships before they had even pulled the trigger. Some vessels simply ceased to exist, not destroyed but edited out of reality as if they had never been built. What is happening? Dalesh screamed, watching his fleet being dismantled by forces he could not comprehend. We are being gentle, came Hyunwoo's voice over the communication channel. These are our non-lethal weapons, the ones we use when we want to disable an enemy without killing them. In less than 10 minutes, half of the Mordaki fleet was disabled. Not destroyed, but simply unable to function. Their ships drifted helplessly in space, crews unharmed but completely unable to control their vessels. This is impossible, Dalesh whispered. No species has technology like this. Most species develop technology to improve their lives, Admiral Mi-kyung explained. Humans developed technology to win wars. When you have 300 years to focus on becoming better at destroying your enemies, you tend to get very good at it. The human fleet had not even moved from their formation. They had disabled half of the most advanced alien fleet in the galaxy without firing a single projectile or energy beam. You have 43 hours remaining, Mi-kyung announced. We have been trying to be polite, Commander Dalesh. Please do not make us stop being polite. Dalesh looked at his disabled ships, at his terrified crew, at the human fleet that floated in space like sleeping gods of war. For the first time in his life, the Mordaki commander understood what it meant to be completely outmatched. The galaxy had tried to warn him. The ancient beacons had tried to save him. But he had been too proud to listen. Now he was learning why the entire galaxy had organized itself around one simple rule. Do not wake the humans. The emergency session of the Galactic Council had been called within hours of the first reports from human space. Representatives from 600 species gathered in the Great Hall on the neutral world of Kepler Prime, their faces filled with the same expression: fear. Ye Jin, the galaxy's leading expert on human psychology, stood at the center of the hall. As a member of the Zephyrian species, she had spent her entire career studying the strange humans who had isolated themselves centuries ago. Now, with reports coming in of impossible weapons and reality-bending technology, every eye in the galaxy was on her. "The humans are fully awake," she announced to the assembled representatives. "For the first time in 300 years, they have activated their military protocols. The Mordaki invasion has triggered a response that we hoped we would never see again." "What does this mean?" asked the representative from the Altarian Republic. "How much danger are we in?" Yejin touched a control, and a holographic display showed the human fleet movements across their territory. Red dots moved in patterns that seemed chaotic but were actually perfectly coordinated. "The humans are currently mobilizing approximately 15,000 warships. These are not the patrol vessels and exploration craft that we have observed for centuries. These are weapons of war built with 300 years of technological advancement." 15,000 ships? The Centaurian delegate's voice was shrill with panic. "Our combined fleets number less than 10,000 vessels." "You misunderstand," Yejin said quietly. 15,000 is not their total military capacity. It is just what they have revealed so far. Human ship construction during the peace years followed a pattern we call exponential preparedness. Every year, they built more ships than the year before. Hidden shipyards and asteroid belts, gas giant moons, and deep space locations have been operating automatically for centuries. The hall erupted in frightened voices as representatives demanded answers. How many ships did the humans really have? What kind of weapons were they using? How had they hidden such massive military preparations for so long? Yejin waited for the noise to die down before continuing. "The Mordaki attack has been educational. Human warships have demonstrated technology that operates outside our understanding of physics. They appear to have weaponized space-time itself. Some reports suggest they can edit matter out of existence or cause effects to happen before their causes." "How is that possible?" demanded the Rigelian ambassador. "Because," Yejin said, "humans never stopped being what they were during the Velthari War. They just learned to hide it better. While the rest of the galaxy developed art, culture, and peaceful technologies, humans spent 3 centuries focused on a single question: what would we need to defeat any possible enemy? In human space, the war was already over, though the Mordaki did not know it yet. Dalesh sat in his command chair and watched his fleet being systematically disabled by weapons that should not exist. Half of his ships could no longer move. A quarter of them existed in a strange state where they were both destroyed and undamaged at the same time. The rest were experiencing temporal anomalies that made normal combat impossible. "Commander," Vector said, his voice barely above a whisper, "I am receiving a communication from our homeworld. Our long-range sensors have detected human ships approaching Mordaki space." "That is impossible. How could they reach our territory so quickly?" "Sir, according to the sensor data, the human ships are moving faster than light, much faster. They appear to be using some kind of space-folding technology that allows them to travel thousands of light years in hours instead of years." Dalesh felt the last of his confidence crumble. The human fleet had not just disabled his invasion force. They had somehow sent ships across the galaxy to threaten his homeworld. Technology like that was beyond anything the Mordaki had ever imagined. A new voice came over the communication channel. This one was calm, professional, and carried an authority that made Dalesh's blood run cold. "Commander Dalesh, this is President Inho of the Human Colonial Union. I am speaking to you from Earth, but my words are also being broadcast to your homeworld and every Mordaki colony in the galaxy." "What do you want?" Dalesh managed to say. "I want to give you a choice," Inho replied. "The same choice we gave the Velthari Empire 300 years ago. You can surrender now and accept our terms, or you can force us to solve the Mordaki problem permanently. What terms? Complete withdrawal from human space, reparations for the damage caused by your invasion, and most importantly, acceptance of the galactic rule that the rest of the universe has followed for 3 centuries. Stay away from human territory. Dalesh tried to maintain some dignity. And if we refuse? There was a long pause. When Inho spoke again, his voice was filled with something that Dalesh recognized as genuine sadness. Commander, do you know what happened to the Velthari Empire? They were defeated in war. No, Inho said. They were removed from existence. Not just their ships or their armies, but their entire species, their worlds, their history. We erased them so completely that most of the galaxy has forgotten they ever existed. Dalesh felt his heart skip a beat. You committed genocide? We did something worse than genocide, Inho said quietly. We made it so they had never existed in the first place. Reality was edited to remove every trace of their civilization. We have that same capability now, improved by 3 centuries of development. You are lying. Commander, came Admiral Mi Kyung's voice. We are transmitting sensor data from your homeworld. Please review it carefully. The data appeared on Dalesh's screens, and he felt his world collapse around him. Human ships had surrounded the Mordaki home system, not attacking, just waiting. But the implications were clear. If humanity chose to use their reality-editing weapons, the Mordaki species could be wiped from existence as completely as if they had never been born. You have 12 hours to make your decision, President Inho announced. Withdraw from human space and accept our terms, or face the same fate as the Velthari. The communication ended, leaving Dalesh alone with the weight of his species' survival. Around him, his officers looked to him for orders, but what orders could he give? How do you fight an enemy that can erase you from history itself? Back in the Galactic Council chambers, a new figure had arrived. Hanul, Earth's first ambassador to the galaxy in 300 years, walked calmly to the center of the hall. She was a small woman, dressed in simple clothes, but every representative in the chamber could feel the power she represented. Honored delegates, Hanul said, her voice carrying easily through the vast hall. I bring a message from the human Colonial Union. What are your demands? The Altarian representative asked. We have no demands, Hanul replied. The Mordaki situation has been resolved. Their fleet is withdrawing from human space as we speak. Their species will survive, and they will be given the chance to rebuild their civilization elsewhere in the galaxy. And what about your fleets, your weapons? Will you continue your military actions? Hanul smiled, and it was a gentle smile that somehow made the assembled representatives feel even more afraid. Our fleets are returning to their hiding places. Our weapons are being powered down. Within 72 hours, human space will appear as peaceful and quiet as it has for the past 3 centuries. But we have seen your capabilities, said the Centaurian delegate. We know what you can do now. You have always known what we could do, Hanul said. That is why you created the rule about not waking us. That is why your trade routes avoid our space. That is why you all agreed 300 years ago to let the sleeping giant remain asleep. She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of representatives from across the galaxy. Nothing has changed. We are returning to sleep. We ask only that you remember the lesson the Mordaki learned. The rule exists for everyone's protection. We do not want to conquer the galaxy. We do not want to rule over other species. We want to be left alone to grow our crops, write our poetry, and raise our children in peace. And if someone else violates your territory? Asked the Rigelian ambassador. Then we will wake up again, Hanul said simply, and we will solve the problem. Permanently. She turned to leave, then paused at the doorway of the chamber. The Mordaki made the mistake of thinking that peace means weakness. They thought that because we choose not to use our full capabilities, we do not have them. I hope the rest of the galaxy will not make the same error. With that, she left. The chamber fell silent as 600 species contemplated the message she had delivered. The humans were going back to sleep, but now everyone knew that they slept by choice, not because they had to. On the bridge of the Eternal Dawn, Captain Hyun-woo watched the last of the human warships disappear into their hiding places. The massive fleet that had awed the galaxy was fading back into the asteroid belts and deep space stations where they had waited for 3 centuries. "Captain," So Young said from her engineering station, "all weapon systems are being deactivated. We are returning to exploration configuration." "And the Mordaki?" Tai Jin asked. "Their fleet is leaving human space," Hyunwoo replied. "They have accepted our terms. Their species will survive, and they will be relocated to territory far from our borders." "Do you think they learned their lesson?"